Okay, so I wanted to come on camera and verbally tell my story. I think it would be so much better than just typing it out and, better articulate. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to come on camera to just better articulate my origin story, my symptoms, everything I've been going through, everything I learned over the years about my condition, and just the totally profound experience I've been having since I am 14 years old, as far back as I can, basically my whole adult life almost. I'm 25 now. I'm a musician, producer, vocalist, video editor, content creator, writer, just tons of creative avenues that align with my path. My symptoms over the years have, oscillated between vertigo, POTS, just sensory overload, just OCD, perfectionism, intrusive thoughts, chronic fatigue, depersonalization, derealization, disassociation, just all types of just hearing and just auditorial and visual disturbances, like tracking visuals, just God, just so many. So I want to touch on just like a brief, like an overview of my whole story for now, and then I want to split this up into like really like a series of segments, just kind of reiterating and going more in depth on like the more broader points that I'm going to talk about in this video. So I will be uploading, more in-depth, detailed videos about certain topics, certain things that I'm going to say in this video. So, wow. Really, like as far back as I can remember, I was getting dizzy in just like weird certain scenarios. I always just had like, I would always just block myself psychologically in just these weird, just esoteric ways. Like, I just remember playing baseball as a kid and just kind of being like, stuck on like the bases and just like, what happens if the ball comes to me? What do I do? What am I? Just always trying to figure it out and always just kind of like in a predicament. And so my first experience, my first real bout of dizziness was when I was 14 in 8th grade. I remember the moment that it happened. I will never forget it. And what happened was, on that great day, I was in social studies class. I remember it was like right before Christmas break. And
You're not gonna.
Sitting in, 6th period social studies, I really had to go to the bathroom bad. And I always had this rule of like, I cannot use the school's bathroom for number 2. And that was just an anomalous day where I had to extremely use the bathroom so bad. And I remember asking Mr. Lisa was his name. Yes, that was his name. My teacher's name, Mr. Lisa. And I said, hey, can I go to the bathroom? Like, I was like, I got up out of my seat to like head towards the bathroom to like get the hall pass and then go to the bathroom. And he just flat out said no. He said, no. I'm like, and then like just totally disregarded me. And so I'm like halfway like out of my seat going to I'm like, and then he's like, no. I'm saying like a lot. My mind is jumping around. I'm going just straight off stream of consciousness, so bear with me. The story might be a little jumpy. So he tells me no. I sit back down in my seat and I'm like, just totally anxiety ridden, thinking about to thinking about to shit myself, to be blunt. And when that started to happen, I felt my first real bout of room spinning, of just like everything just felt so disassociated and weird, and like everything is just, everyone's voices, everyone in the class just looked, it felt like almost everybody was staring at me. Like it's the strangest, most dizzying, just like it felt like my head was just like buzzing. There was all like this buzzing sensation in my scalp. It was awful. And then I ended up just having this attack, and like I didn't have like the self-respect to just like go to the goddamn bathroom, and I just like sat there and just suffered, because I just was like so embarrassed that like I'm gonna shit myself in front of the whole class, and like all these intrusive thoughts just start flooding through my mind. And that was like my first attack like that. And I remember like for the rest of the day, I just sucked it up and I just went on with my classes. I went to the next period, and I was just like, that whole rest of the day was a complete blur. I never went to the bathroom. I never went to the bathroom until I got home that day. But yeah, I that whole rest of the day in school was just so derealized and so dreamlike and so strange. The lighting, everything just looked so sensitive all of a sudden. Like the lights in the hallway, people walking by me. It was just such like a total, just like as if like I was shot out of a cannon. So I get home from school that day, and I finally go to the bathroom. I remember sitting on the toilet in my house, just thinking, what the fuck just happened to me? What is this? And ever since that day, since that moment, birthed this, what would change my whole life, literally. That one moment that Mr. Lisa said, no, you can't go to the bathroom, changed the trajectory, the whole path of my life. And it's just so amazing. I often think to myself, what would my life look like had I not had that scenario happen? And I often think, I'm sure I still would have some anxiety to some degree, because of just the childhood that I had prior to even that. Even before 14, life was pretty hectic, very hectic in the home. Lots of emotional, verbal, psychological damage that happened throughout pretty much my entire childhood. That was leading up to before I was 14 years old. I think when I was 14, and that moment of, truth was just like really a whole burst of what has been building up my entire life before that. And so that started this whole entire pattern of OCD, this obsession around, once I knew it was possible, like it wasn't something I ever had to think about, shitting my pants in school, but now it's an actual thing. Now that I got so close to really feeling like what that would feel like had it happened, it started this whole obsessive pattern through literally kind of like a little bit into this day. I mean, now that I have a different perspective on it, but literally every single day after that going forward was just this entire, like school just became this endurance practice of like, can I make it through the day without having to shit myself? And every single day I would watch as my body felt hijacked from that point. Every day I would go to school. As soon as I walk in school, I'm dizzy as fuck. And the whole time I can't listen to the teachers. Like nothing makes sense to me. Like my attention span is just totally gone. Whatever the teacher's saying just sounds so secondary. Whatever's going on outside of me is just so completely secondary to what is just going on inside my mind and body at that moment, which was I would go to school, sit down, get dizzy as fuck, feel my stomach starting to turn, feel myself starting to feel like, oh my God, I have to shit. I'm going to shit myself. Oh my God, there's all these people, there's all these stories. And there was this one kid at the time in middle school who he did actually shit himself in chorus class, and that kid actually moved. Like he moved to Florida after he shit himself in chorus. He left the school and he moved to Florida, and that was like a whole big like thing amongst all the kids in school at the time. It was like, oh my God, that's so and so that shit himself and he left for Florida. It was like this whole legend of like this poor kid that shit himself in chorus class in 7th, 8th grade and moved. So that was also burning in the back of my mind, where it's like, whoa, I can be another case of we'll call him Kevin. I could be another case of that, and I'll be that weird kid that shit himself and left the school and was so embarrassed, and like there was like that started to develop into just like this really hardcore just like insecurity about my whole life, about what people would think of me, what people thought of me, and just like this whole self-image, this whole self-concept obsessive pattern just it just grew from this fear. It started out like, what if I shit myself? And then it just grew and grew and grew, and then eventually started to grow into, what if I start passing out in school? What if I get so dizzy I pass out, and I'm now that kid that's passing out, and it's a big spectacle, and I'm passing out and I'm shitting myself, and then it's like, ooh, but what if this happens? What if I'm like it just snowballed into just such chaotic, intrusive thoughts, like, oh my God. And so it's a lot. I'm trying to jive my memory to go from there. So that was my whole middle school years. Was morphed into that. And then so just 9th grade comes around, 10th grade comes around. I'm watching how it starts to progress. I started drinking alcohol so before I get to that, so like 8th grade, right? I'm calling home like pretty much every other day, like Mom, I got dizzy again, and this and that, and just not to bash my mom or my parents. That's not what I'm here to do. Although most of the emotional trauma is rooted in from your parents, and I'm coming on here to tell the truth of what my life was, truthfully, not exaggerated, not extraordinary, to tell the truth of what happened. And there is a lot of really dark and uncomfortable times and years with my parents, with my mom specifically. And just every day was just like, my mom is a classic textbook narcissist. There's no other way to put it. And, it's last thing I ever want to come off is like I'm bashing or dragging her through the mud. She's very well-meaning, but again, that's why they say the road to hell is paved with well-meaning and good intentions. So every day was just, a fight. Every day was just, this is where more of my self-loathing started to develop, because every day there's always like I said, there's always like, you never wanted to be that weird kid in school that just had all these medical anomalies going on, and just like, I'm calling home every day to like leave the school because I'm just so goddamn dizzy. I have no idea what's happening. And again, it's like, you become so hypersensitive to your peers, and like you have no idea what's going on in your body. And you see kids just like living normal lives and playing sports, and I started to feel like very like alien, just very alienated, and just very like starting to feel disabled. And that was really hard to deal with. And every day I would call school. I would call my mom to come get me, and it would just be a fight. It would just be an argument. It would just be her screaming at me, that I'm missing school. I'm fucking up my life at eighth grade. I'm fucking up my whole life. I'm gonna be, you're gonna be a bum. You're never gonna get a job. You're never gonna this. You're never gonna that because you're not going to school. And like, I always knew school was bullshit, even from a very young age. But still, like, you have this peer pressure. You have, like, your parents are your whole life. Like, you depend on them for everything. And so I started to believe that. And it really fell into this immense pressure I put on myself of just like, I'm fucking up my life. Oh my God. I'm not going to pass. I'm going to go to summer school because I'm dizzy and I can't be in school, and I'm not passing tests. I'm failing tests because I'm so dizzy. And then so I start to suppress it. You start to become very repressive. I start to repress it. And everybody's just telling me, oh, it's all in your head. It's all in your head, right? It's all in your head. It's just, every day, the messages I was getting from my mom, like, that's all she would tell me. It's just like, you got to fight it. Like, oh, you fight it. You just fight it. And again, anyone who knows anything about anxiety and how the mind works, the worst thing to do is to go into your anxiety attacks with that mentality. So a little backstory. I mean, before all of this happened, like, around 7, I remember like around 6, 7 years old, my folks, my dad is a retired homicide detective in Brownsville, New York. He retired in 2003. Definitely OCD runs in my family, whether, they want to admit it or not. My dad definitely has. How could you not come out of that job without PTSD is the real question. And my mom was, they're both very blunt New Yorker, grew up in Queens type of people of that generation. There's, they are just very cut and dry, very matter of fact. There is not, a lot of that generation. Unfortunately, it's like, if they don't see the issue with their eyes, if they can't see physically what's happening to you, it just doesn't exist. Like, anxiety and these types of things don't exist a lot to that generation. It's just like, to them, it's just like, we're all just a bunch of pussy ass little Gen Z Zoomers, which, don't get me wrong, there's a whole other conversation to be had about that. But, so that will influence you. And my dad, and just watching the way my parents handle their emotions, was very poor. And I just thought that was normal at the time. How else would you know? You have no other context other than your fucking parents. And when he retired from, police, we were broke. We were broke as shit. And my dad was doing like construction jobs, and like they were like dormering our house at the same time. And the house was just always unfinished. And we were like eating out of a crock pot every night. And just like the house was like under construction for years. And that during that time was like, my parents were had the worst fucking fights like ever, like arguments, like every night. There was like it never got physical to the point of, ever seeing them physically abuse each other. But like, yeah, definitely a lot of fucking verbal and heart, like just the most darkest shit people could ever say to each other. And I just remember how, like fucking dangerous that felt. I mean, how the fuck could it not at 7 years old? And just like, this is where it's like, I guess I never really fully acknowledged the unconscious part. Like, again, like you don't realize how fucked up or something is until like you're older and wiser, and you look back and you remember what your parents were screaming at each other, and you're like, holy shit. And you try to empathize with them, and you just try to think like, what the fuck kind of mental state would I have to be in to like say what my mom and dad were saying to each other? Like, what the fuck? And so you just normalize it. I just thought that was normal, like screaming, fighting, breaking shit, ripping doors off hinges. I have to tell the truth here. And I want to be respectful to my parents. Like at the same time, I love them to death. There's just never coming from a place like that ever. It's just we can always improve. We can always go back and face the facts of the past and just start to let go. And so I have to tell my story truthfully, and that is a huge part of it. Was my mom's narcissistic abuse, and just my dad he's more passive in a relationship to my mom, and my mom kind of runs the show emotionally, verbally, kind of wears the pants in a lot of ways. My dad is very I watch how he dealt with his emotions, and he, like I said, he's just a very much like a man's man, working class, stand-up guy who just, you go to work, you do what you got to do, you do your job, and you just kind of keep moving on, and not really deal with your emotions. I guess a lot of that generation just didn't have the ideas that we have today, where it's like, unfortunately, a lot of men don't deal with their emotions because they think it's weak or effeminate or whatever. So I just always suppressed it, and I just remember like finally telling my dad like what was happening every day, like going to school and getting dizzy as fuck. And I remember so they retired in 2000. He retired in 2003. We bought his dream was to always own an Italian restaurant, and he bought a restaurant in 2007. And my parents started working, and my mom was never home. Like my both of them were never home. So this was when I was 9 years old. So I had to grow up and learn quick. And looking back in hindsight, I'm so fucking grateful that they weren't in the house, because it gave me the platform, the space to become my own adult and just learn how to, grow very fast. It was just me and my two older sisters at home. Where was I going? Okay. Bought the restaurant. So I remember having conversations with my dad and him telling me, like, I remember at 14, I started Googling like, dizziness, dizzy at school. Like, I remember Googling shit, and I was getting a lot of anxiety, like anxiety shit was popping up on Google, right? And again, like, it's like this, I think each family kind of has these types of tropes in their family where you kind of think your family is just so much more unique to the world. And just like, like I said, my dad is a very man's man, very much just, very, just very rigid in a lot of ways. And, and it's well-meaning. It's well-meaning. Like, I think every family kind of has this thing where it's like, oh no, we don't get anxiety. Oh, that's like for the world out there. That's not like us. We're different. I think every family to some degree holds those types of a bit arrogant kind of views, and that can get you in trouble if you attach to it too hard, like I did. And I just remember seeing shit pop up about anxiety. I'm like, anxiety? We don't get anxiety. Anxiety is for like weird people. Anxiety is for like, this it's not for, that's for others, that's like for the weird world out there. We're different. We're tough. We don't get anxiety. So I'm like, no, it's not anxiety. It's not this, right? And I remember talking to my dad, and my dad, like, just even talking to my dad, he has a very, what often kind of feels dismissive, but it's well-meaning. It's like when I start to kind of complain to my dad, like, I feel this way, I feel that way, and then he's kind of just like, yeah, we don't get anxiety. We don't get anxiety. Oh, you don't have anxiety. We don't get anxiety. And it's like what he's trying. I know what his intention is. I know his intention is like, by telling me I don't have this thing that, like, I that makes me feel better, but it didn't, because it just confused the fuck out of me. It just gaslighted the fuck out of me. because again, it reinforced this like, we don't get anxiety. That's for the world. But I am getting fucking anxiety every fucking day, and I'm not acknowledging it as anxiety because I have this idea, this obsessive attachment that like, no, we don't get fucking anxiety. That's like for weird people. So that there's a lot of that got me into a lot of trouble with myself and with my cause. So again, the years go by, I just repress it, and every doctor I was going to, I'm going to a general physician, and he's just telling me, yo, you have anxiety, you're going through a growth spurt, whatever. So what was my next point? I would say around 16, 17 was when it really started to fuck my life up. There's a lot of shit that I'm like leaving out that I'm going to retouch on because there's just so much. There's so much to try to explain. I'm just trying to give a general overview here. By 16, 17 years old, that's when shit got really fucking tough. Once 10th, 11th grade rolled around, that was when shit got bad. I remember there was a period in 10th grade where I did start to feel better, like in the beginning of the year, like October, November, December. It was that Christmas break that everything turned for the worst in 10th grade. So in 10th grade, I remember I was like, starting to drink more, started to go to parties more, started to smoke weed for the first time. And I was, the first time I smoked weed, it felt good. I felt great. I felt great from it. And it was working for me. And I thought, oh, this is great. Like, this is what I could do for my dizziness, just like become a pothead. And so I would smoke a lot. And then that turned into, it did kind of help. And drinking helped. I never drunk to the point where I was like blackout drunk or like throwing up or, shit like that. But I was drinking like every weekend. And it was kind of helping me forget about the anxiety of being dizzy and just like being in school. And then I remember Christmas break, everything turned for the worst when we were smoking weed. And I remember buying weed from a different kid and going back to my house and smoking it with my girlfriend at the time. That was the first time I got high to the point where I lost my perception of time. That freaked me the fuck out bad. And I remember sitting on the couch after we smoked. And it was weird because, like, I just took one little hit. I smoked bongs before. I smoked whole J's. And I smoked so much more. And then, like, but it was, like, fucking me up this time from just taking one little hit. And that was extremely humbling. And I remember my girlfriend finished the whole thing by herself after I took one hit. And I was just gone. And we go back in the couch, and I just remember, like, my concept of time was gone. I was watching the clock. It was 4 o'clock. I remember, like, seeing, like, 4:01, 4:02, and I just felt like an eternity. And I remember, like, my grandma was supposed to come home, and just, like, the thought of, like, her, like, coming home, like, I couldn't register it in my brain. It was so strange. And my dog was just barking. Oh my God. But that's a whole other video I probably am going to make, is just literally just about talking about my dog and how much he ruined my nervous system. But he was just, we had this Yorkie. He just died September of this year. This fucking Yorkie did not stop. Like, it was like spiritually, objectively crazy how much he fucking barked. And that is a big part of my story here. And I remember the fuck was that? I remember her sitting there, and she was sitting next to me, and she's like, Tony, I'm not high enough. I'm not high enough. Let's smoke more. Let's smoke more. But like, it sounded so far away. That was probably like my first time with like depersonalization, like out of body experience was that experience. And, wow, that kind of passed over. And then the next day I smoked again. And this is where everything changed. I was smoking with my two friends, at the time. Vin was Vinny and Theo. Vin and Theo. Again, same scenario. It was like 8 o'clock at night. We're at my house on a Saturday night. Same scenario. I smoked fucking one hit of this stupid ass little J, and I was gone. I felt so strange. I felt so out of body. And I just remember playing basketball with Vin, and like he's in my ear. He was in my ear like, I'm in your dreams. I'm in your nightmares. I'm in your dreams. I'm in your nightmares, kid. Like he kept doing that. And Theo was doing the same thing. And I was like, whoa, I was like so out of body and having like such out of body experiences. And I just felt so strange. Like my hearing was all weird. Like the sound of his voice was like really making me dizzy. Like the yellow lights of the street lights was like throwing me off. I felt like I was swaying. I felt like really weird and out of body. And, they were both like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Tony, what's wrong? Like, they kept doing that. It was tripping me the fuck out. And, the next day, we're playing basketball again. Oh, mind you, so that night, I started I was like, oh my God, like I just need to watch a movie and like relax or something. And I was watching Netflix, and I felt so out of body. It felt so weird. I was having all these intrusive thoughts like about my dog and about my dog being harm. It was like all this harm OCD that was happening. And I was like, wait, let me just put on a movie and try to relax. And so I never seen the movie Juice before with Tupac. If anybody ever seen the movie Juice, it is not like the cover is like, judge a book by its cover, because the cover of Juice looks like some happy friends, until you watch the fucking movie. It's the worst movie to ever watch when you're having a bad trip, or just in general. It's just it's like just a depressing movie to watch. So I watched Juice, and that just put me in such a worse mood that I was already in. And then the next day we're playing basketball, and I still felt weird. I still felt high. I still felt out of body. And I remember I laid on the ground, and Theo picked me up really fast by my shirt, and he screamed in my face, he's like, you gotta get in the game. And when he did that, like the word game, it like reverberated all through my skull, and it disoriented the fuck out of me. I thought like I just fell off a building. That's how it felt. It felt like I like fell from outer space. It was so strange. And I'm getting derealization even talking about it. That was the birth of me developing this OCD about wearing headphones all the time and covering my ears. I went back to school that Monday. Everyone's voice, the teacher's voice, everyone's voice sounded so fucking weird to me. It sounded like anyone who was talking close to my ear, I could really fucking sense. Every sense of their being felt so intense, felt so just overwhelming. Just everyone's body, and like again, walking in the hallway was super dizzying. Everybody talking, my whole sensory was thrown the fuck off so bad. So, like I said, I became very repressive and just sucked it up, and made it through the rest of that year. And then 11th grade comes around, This is when shit started. Like I started. Oh no. Sorry, I'm jumping. I'm getting ahead of myself. That summer, the summer of 10th grade going into 11th grade, was when I started really developing all my obsessive habits, my compulsion, my compulsive behavior really started in the summer of 10th grade going into 11th. I remember playing basketball with my friends and just having this chronic fatigue. Like I had to sit on the bench. I had to sit on the side and just close my eyes while we're playing basketball. And everyone's looking at me like, yo, oh, what's up with Serenero? Why is he always sleeping? And like, I had just very douchebag friends at the time. And like, they would all make fun of me. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is happening in my body. And again, you feel like a pussy. You feel like a bitch. Like if you were to, I'm tired. Oh, I'm tired. But I was like so fatigued. Like I couldn't help it. And I would just like sit on the sidelines and fucking close my eyes in the middle of the park, middle of the basketball court. And so I'm thinking like, I'm not sleeping enough. I'm not sleeping enough. Or I'm not eating enough. I'm not eating enough. So that morphed into me always having a fucking sandwich or a water bottle, just like scarfing down sandwiches and water bottles like every day. And I'm watching myself become bloated. I was never fat. No one in my family's ever fat. There's no fat genetics. I was at the height of like my athleticism, like working out, eating right, going to the gym, and then I'm starting to fucking bloat. It wasn't like fat. It was like my stomach was bloating, and I did put on like a little bit of belly fat, but like when you look at my stomach, you look at my face and like it didn't look like a fat person. It was just like big. It was just like sticking out. Like it looked inflamed. And then I started noticing my face started to look inflamed. And this is all the summer of 10th grade going into 11th grade. And just like all this weird inflammation started happening around my body. And I'm starting to go through like this body dysmorphia. Like, what the fuck? Like, I'm losing myself. Like, I felt like my whole body was just like being hijacked and leaving me. And I mean, it fucking was really. And all my friends are calling me fat, and they're making fun of me. And like, I was like afraid to go anywhere without a fucking sandwich, without a ham sandwich or a water bottle. And I looked so stupid and just sad, just trying to stuff down food down my throat because it kind of helped. It kind of made me a little less dizzy in a way, but I mean, it didn't at the same time. And so, like, I'm like, oh, I'm just dehydrated. Like, I'm not drinking enough water. And, like, every day in school, I'm guzzling down, like, fucking 8 water bottles, like, before school ended. Like, 8 of them. 8, 9, 10 water bottles. Like, that's insane. And I would drink myself so much. I would drink so much fucking water, and I would just start pissing like crazy. I would go to the bathroom, like, 2 times every period. And, like, I'm just starting to do all this weird shit, and I'm feeling dizzier and fucked up the more I drink water. So I thought, like, oh my God, I just got to keep drinking water. And that's what I learned about water intoxication. And I was just so over flooding my system, probably depleting every electrolyte in my fucking body by drinking so much water and pissing it out. And like, I would literally be in the bathroom. Literally, this is how crazy it got. I would be pissing clear as day while I'm drinking a water bottle as I'm pissing. I got that crazy obsessive thinking I'm just fucking dehydrated. And but it's really me water intoxicating the shit out of myself to the point where I felt like I was gonna faint, and I went to the nurse so like every other day from doing that. Wow, like holy shit. And yeah, again, I think I probably really bloated my stomach and face and just fucking wrecked my nervous system by doing that. And to this day, I'm very weary of how I drink water. And as you can see. So that was so tough to deal with. It was so, like all my friends were making fun of me. And like, again, it just made me have a fucking eating disorder. And it developed into like, I don't want to eat in front of anybody. I don't want anyone to see me eat, even to this day, which I'll get to later in the story. But Yeah, I just progressively kept getting dizzier and dizzier. In 11th grade, I remember that was when the dropping sensation started, the debarkment really started, like all these weird dropping sensations. I remember after fucking myself up, okay, from being water drunk, I remember I'd go back to my desk in my seat and I would try to sit down. And every time I would look down to write or like, something like that, I'd feel a fucking dropping. I felt like the floor just fell out beneath me, like instantly. Like I would be looking down. I mean, I can kind of induce it even right now, even to this day. If I look down for too long, or if I'm looking down like this, or if I'm sitting up at a desk, I felt like, oh shit. Like I would literally it would literally sometimes involuntarily make me be like, oh fuck. Like in school, I would be looking down and it felt like I would be falling forward. Like I just fell through the fucking desk. And that was really hard to deal with. That was so just bizarre. Like all these bizarre symptoms. Like, again, like standing in the hallway and like trying to talk to people at the lockers and like being in gym class and like always feeling like I needed to insulate my ears. Like I needed something in my ears at all times just to soothe my overwhelmed senses. And like, it was so hard to sit in the desk in school because I would get these dropping sensations. It feels like I feel like I'm going to fall out of the fucking chair. And even to this day, when I lean my back up against the back of the chair, like the fucking the backrest on a seat, I would lean back like this and it feels like I'm falling forward. Like I would feel like, oh shit. And I would so I would kind of sit not on the seat. I would sit like in the middle of it, and then all this tension would accumulate in my lower back, and I would just be like a fucking ball, just so tensed up in my seat in class, and I couldn't concentrate. I looked like a fucking idiot. I looked so dumb, like squirming around. It was awful. It was fucking hell. Like teachers and shit are like starting to get concerned about me. And again, like I was just trying to tough it out. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want anyone to know what was happening to me. So I was scared as fuck. Every time I ever voiced this to like, doctors or some shit, they always fucking just looked at me like I have 10 heads. And every time I ever said something to my parents, it was always an argument. And I just felt so stupid. Everyone around me is healthy. I start to like disassociate from the world. And you start to feel like it's you versus the world. And like everyone else is healthy and validated. And I'm just like this fucked up case. And that's where it becomes so like this abstract idea in your head, this abstract, weird, unconscious thing that you start to adapt into, that you start to over adapt and just, adapt into this really fucked up way of living and just like, existing. Like existing is just awful. So, man, I remember being at like house parties and shit. And like I would be pretending to drink alcohol. I'd be pretending that like my water bottle, because everyone had alcohol in water bottles in those days, like when you're in high school and shit. I would just pretend that I was drinking vodka or some shit. And like, people would come up to me like, oh, can I have a sip of that? And I'm like, no, it's water. And they're like, oh, stop lying. And I'm like, no, it really is water. And then like I would feel like stupid because I'm drinking water around everyone drinking alcohol. And I'm just suffering in silence. I'm just pretending I'm enjoying the party and like, but everyone who's coming up to me and talking to me, I'm hyper vigilant about the sound of their voice. I'm trying to walk outside. I look weird. I'm trying to run into the bathroom and sneak a fucking deli sandwich in my mouth. I would literally have a deli sandwich in my pocket and I would go into the bathroom at house parties and eat and try to like calm down from being so fucking dizzy and fucked up. And I remember just like times I would walk outside and going from like the light inside the room to like the dark of like outside, like on the porch or some shit. It would like fuck my eyes up so weird. I never had any of these issues. I never had any concept of myself ever having issues like this. And so again, it's just like I suppressed it for many years, suppress it, and just, kind of man up, right? You kind of just suck it up and just move on with life. And by 12th grade is when yeah, I was like bloated. I was fucking weird, and everyone's making fun of me. Yeah, my friends would like steal my sandwich. They would like throw it around, and like I was just became this fucking anxious mess. Like I would attract like nervous shit. Like I would just start attracting nervous things. I remember at this one house party, I it was like outdoors, and like I sat down on this fucking lawn chair and I broke it. And this is when like I was I was like going through really hardcore insecurity and like depression that I'm getting fat, and like which really wasn't like fat. It was like there was a noticeable difference in my body. But it was extremely devastating at 17, 16 years old. And I remember being at this one part, and like all my friends, that's all they would do was make fun of me, how fat I was getting and this and that. And I would just take it on the chin and just like pretend like it didn't fucking hurt. And pretend like it didn't morph into a fucking eating disorder for the next 8 years. And yeah, I remember being at this one house party, and I sat on this lawn chair and I fucking broke it. And it broke and it snapped in front of everybody. And like literally like 80 people, it was such a packed backyard. Literally 80 people were like, asshole, 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 like to me. And I'm sitting there on the ground in this fucking broken lawn chair. All my friends, everyone around me is laughing at me. They're like, asshole, for like a minute straight. And it was like a fucking early 2000s movie. It was like I just sitting there shocked. I was so dizzy. It was, I literally talk about a movie scene. That was legit a fucking movie scene. I was so embarrassed to my core. I was like, oh my God, I'm this fat, fucking disgusting loser, dizzy. What the fuck is wrong with me? My life is over. I never want to go back to school. If I go back to school, I'm worried I'm just gonna faint and shit my pants. Awfulness. Like, what the fuck? And wow. And, my parents are just busy with the restaurant and shit, and like they're dealing with their fucking emotions, which I thought were normal. And like, again, it's just like I'm going from this, toxic environment of school, and then I go home and my mom and, my parents are just stressed out from working all day, and they just come home and scream all fucking night at each other. So, and here I am. I think I'm like a pussy if like I say anything. So I just suppress all this shit for all these fucking years. And 12th grade comes around. And that's when I really started to like lose it for school. Like I'm just like, this is not working. I went to school a total of 9 days. Senior year, I went 9 total days of school out of 180 days, I think it is, right? Oh, fuck. That was when like I was gathering with all these counselors and people and guidance counselors. They're like, this is when it was like, okay, there's obviously something wrong with you that we need to address. And that's when it like, I started to give it its first real look at like, okay, I obviously have issues going on here. And so that's when I started to learn how to produce. I got into music production in the summer of 11th grade going into 12th grade is when I started to learn Ableton, my music software, and I got just so addicted to that. I'm getting dizzy right now talking about this. See, in the past, I wouldn't have said that. I would just like pretend like I'm not dizzy. But now I'm starting to get better at like acknowledging when I'm dizzy and saying, no, I'm fucking dizzy right now. I'm not going to pretend like I'm not just to appease this person because, I developed poor boundaries, like very poor boundaries, and I just became very passive and just very hurt by life. And just like, you can't, anyways, that's a whole other sidebar. But, I became super workaholic with my music and learning music and using it as escapism and just using it as a way to not deal and like think about my emotions. I'm just gonna work so hard. I'm gonna get so good at producing that I just don't feel any emotions of what I'm going through. And it did help. It did help to like, escape a little bit in music and learn how to do it. And just like it gave me something to do. And I just became a total fucking hermit, became a total workaholic over that summer, learning music production. And I would lay in bed for 12 hours a day. Like I would literally wake up, get my laptop, just be on my laptop learning this program for like 14 hours a day, neglecting my body, not eating, not drinking, because I felt like it was weak if I did. Like I felt like I'm weak if I need to get water or something like that. And I would just be laying in the most fucked up positions. I'd be laying on my side, holding my neck up, and just my neck would be a mess. Just so, like, over the years, like, I'm just fucking up my neck and spine, and just becoming a total workaholic. It's like perfectionist, where it's like, that's like the only place I feel safe and like I deserve love is like when I'm being hyper productive. There's a lot of that comes from my dad in that sense of just like this being, my parents work 7 days a week. They don't ever rest. And there's a lot of just abuse around self-care, a lot of guilt around self-care that my mom would spew all throughout the house every day. My mom has this routine, even to this day, a little bit. I mean, she's calmed down a little bit, where she just manically cleans the house and just damns everybody. She just would just go around with the mop and broom and just would just curse everything to death, and everything was just. She just walks around narrating everything wrong with everybody and everybody in the house and screaming. And like I said, my dog. At the time, yeah, my dog would just be barking like crazy, and I would just wake up to that every day. I didn't wake up. I was woken up every single fucking day to like my mom aggressively slamming shit in the kitchen, my dog barking like crazy, her just screaming on the phone at my dad, and her screaming about employees and, at the restaurant, and just awful shit about what friend of hers from the past is dying, and just like she's just obsessed with just like who's dying and who's ill, and just like, oh, this person has cancer, just the most awful shit you could ever wake up to. Where was I even going? Okay, so 12th grade. So 12th grade, yes, it was just like, again, this routine: go to school, get dizzy, come home. I would escape school. That was the year I would just leave school. Like, I would get so dizzy, I would just fucking walk out. I would go to the deli, I would leave, and there would be, the principal would be in his car looking for me, and like there'd be all the staff members just looking for me, in the parking lot or wherever I went, and it was just like this big manhunt to find me every day, and I was just dizzy as fuck, like leaving school. I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I knew that I wanted to go into music. I was always musical. And so I'm like, why the fuck am I in school? School is nothing that's going to help me in this career. There's nothing for me in school. I'm just dizzy every fucking second of it. I have no friends anymore. Everyone looks at me like I'm this fucking weirdo mental case. So why the fuck am I going to school? It just traumatizes me every fucking day of my life. So I just stopped going. And like, obviously that was not easy to do. With my parents, and I would come home every day to my mom screaming at me how much of a fuck up I am, how I'm a loser, how I'm going to be 40 years old, living at my parents' house, and this and that. And it was sad because she then influenced my dad to stoop down to her level. And that is when things got really fucking traumatic. So I was in a position where I felt everyone is against me. My parents are against me. Doctors are against me. And I end up graduating high school. I kind of just went through that whole routine for the rest of the year until, they kind of just graduated me because they knew like I wasn't a bad kid. They knew like I wasn't actually a fuck up. And that I did know what I want. I was always very driven. I was always very personality type A, type, go-getter type of person. And they knew that about me. So I still got a diploma, crazy enough. I still graduated, crazy enough. And the years go on, I get into DJing and EDM, and like I'm throwing my own shows, I'm building myself in that scene, and I'm doing all these things. And then, like, I start seeing how other areas of my body started to dysfunction. I start to see how around 21, 22 years old was like when I was probably at my worst, like sexual dysfunction. And I'm starting to see like really scary changes happening with my sexual function, which I'll make a whole video of talking specifically about all of these. I'm going to reiterate all these points in more specific videos. So that was awful. It was hard. You start to give up. You start to give up on a social life. You start to give up on having any intimacy or intimate life. And it wasn't until like I started waking up with POTS, waking up like with the room spinning, like more than normal. It's like your baseline of dizziness, and then you wake up and it's just like this is something new. This is something very felt threatening and like way more fucked up than like how I was usually feeling. So that's when it was the year of 2020. It was like right before. So I was watching this weird trend happen where I would get my worst like POTS. Like I would always wake up with vertigo around the same time of year. It was always right before New Year's, like December 29th, 28th, like that pocket, like that limbo between Christmas and New Year's. I would always have that would be my highest window of potential for waking up with POTS. And that happened like 3 years in a row. And it wasn't until 2019 going into 2020, that December 29th, I woke up with fucking POTS again. I woke up just so dizzy and just crazy vertigo. And I just cried to my parents on the phone. I'm like, fuck this. Like, this is enough. Like, I want to kill myself. I was like having suicidal idealizations. Like, I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm done. I want to fucking kill myself. And I was always so afraid. Like, I knew about the Epley maneuver. I knew about these types of things. I was doing heavy research, but I was always so afraid to actually go and do it. And, I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I surrender. I will do anything. Because it's like you grow this weird self-loathing where it's like, I feel so fucked up, but like I'm also afraid to do anything about it. And like I'm afraid to know what I might feel. If I do like the Epleys and admit, like if I'm going to make it worse or something, like I'm just going to dig myself in a deeper hole. I was always so afraid to go get treatment. And so I was like, dude, I'm done with this. Like I'll do anything. Like I don't care anymore. So that's when I started doing chiropractic. I found the guy that I started going to for the next 2 years. We started out doing Epley maneuvers and it did help. It did I remember the first time I did it, I did get up from the table feeling different. But I knew that wasn't it. I knew there was a long road ahead of me. Like there was such a long fucking road ahead of me. Like I knew that intuitively. Like there was, so then he adjusted me and started like working on my neck and spine and everything for the next 2 years. And that helped a lot. That made a tremendous amount of change in my body. And so it wasn't until like last year where I started looking up like upper cervical issues and things like that. And that's when I ran across, I discovered Dr. Hauser on YouTube and like everything he was saying about POTS and the nervous system and upper cervical. And just like, I just remember all those years of working on music in my bed and just like how fucked up my neck would feel. I remember working on music for so many hours. I would get up and I remember saying to myself, like, oh, I'm definitely fucking up my neck. I remember saying those words to myself, and my neck was in so much pain. And then, yes, I went to him last year. I did the digital motion x-rays, the transcranial Dopplers, like every test under the sun you could ever imagine. And I do have a really bad military neck. My C1 is a mess. Just like everything from C1 to C5 is all crooked and rotated and this and that. So I was going to get prolotherapy. I didn't actually get any injections just yet. So I'm still on the fence about if I should do that or not. I went down there and the tests were very revealing to me. I obviously, the next step for me is like, correcting the curve and doing as much as I can on that end. So like everything just kind of feels in limbo a bit. I'm doing the chiropractor once a week. I've been doing chiropractor every week for the last since 2020. And then I discovered Dr. Yo's YouTube, and I started doing VOR. I like totally neglected the vestibular. Like in the beginning of, treating myself, I obviously took into I went to vestibular therapist. I went to a few vestibular therapists, and they both discharged me. They both discharged me and said like I was fine, and like they said I had issues, but then they like let me go for some reason. It was really weird. So like I was just so confused with like vestibular therapists, and like I lost faith in that. And I just neglected and kind of abandoned the vestibular aspect and just really honed in hardcore on like having cervical issues and like that being the cause of all my dizziness, which a lot of it is. And so it wasn't until recent months, like literally January of this, like literally like last month, I started going down the rabbit hole of Dr. Yo and just like all of the intrusive thoughts and just like everything coming up. It's just like, no, this is just too good to be true. Like, this is just too good to be fucking true of like someone knows this much about these conditions like debarkment and all this shit. Like, that's another, one of my biggest issues is my debarkment. It is why I'm constantly in my car all the time. I literally am in my car from the second I wake up till I go to bed. I always say, I live in my car. I just sleep at home. So I'm always in the car working on music and with my laptop on my steering wheel desk. I'm always riding back and forth. I'll sit in the parking lot. That's what I'm saying. It's like it makes you do weird shit. This is my studio space here in Brooklyn. But I'll sit in my car and do a lot of work there. I'll make beats in my car. I'll work on mixes and masters and engineering and graphic design and edit the videos in my car. And I sit in the park for hours straight, literally all day, all night, and I'm rocking back and forth. It looks crazy. There's just like this big black Jeep Wrangler just going back and forth, back for hours. And I make a lot of friends that way. A lot of people come up to me. They're like, yo, are you okay? Like, are you good? You're just riding back and forth. I meet a lot of cops that way. I make a lot of cop friends. I make a lot of strange friends. People come up to me. I'm like famous in this park for like everyone knows my car is like the car that rocks back and forth. And then so I was always embarrassed about it. And then I just started to like be honest about it. I started to tell people like, hey, look, I got this dizziness issue and it's called debarkment and I have to constantly move. And so I knew Dr. Yo's content was the truth when she just the way she articulates and goes so in depth. It's so scary how again it's like you disbelieve it because it's like how could somebody know so exactly to the point of what I'm going through? You become hopeless, and then I started to feel like, no, this is all hippie bullshit. This is like, all those intrusive thoughts, right? So I started doing the VOR exercises, and that has been changing so much for me in the past month. I'm my first month in of doing just VOR. Like what I do is look to the right, minute, 30 seconds, look to the left, and then just keep doing that diagonals and just doing that. Like that has been changing so much for me. And I feel myself going through a massive change. For so long, like I said, I neglected my emotions. I neglected the vestibular. I neglected the correlation between emotions, nervous system, the vestibular. I never looked enough at my trauma and my childhood and how home has become my biggest source of danger. Literally every night when I drive home, I still live at home with my parents. I literally shake. My body shakes. The second I walk in my house, I get fucking dizzy. I've had my worst dizziness episodes at home. So home has become branded as this traumatic place for emotions and physical symptoms. So it's, it's working on, like she says, like the danger mode and just the heightened sense I feel around my parents, around my mom, around waking up to her screaming, and just never took into account how much all of that affected me. And I always felt like a pussy because of it. I always felt weak. I always felt like, no, this is not how you deal. Like, oh, you just move on, you just suppress it, and be a man. These types of things. So that's where I'm at currently. There's so much more I have to say that I'm leaving out. I'm really burnt out from this video. I've been going an hour straight. I'm gonna make a whole series out of talking about all these very specific and just be very esoteric and very to the point, brutally honest, because I, for so many years, was so embarrassed by this and so just so dishonest with myself, and so just trying to hide it and not tell people what's going on, not tell my parents exactly what's happening with me. Just, it would just create just awkward social interactions with people. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I have a lot of notes I wrote down about just like all different topics of like everything. So, man, I hope this video wasn't too incoherent. Like I said, I'm going strictly off memory and stream of consciousness right now. And, I only slept like 2 hours. So, I really hope people find value in this. Maybe somebody feels less alone like I do. And I was, like I said, fucking suicidal, hopeless. And, which I'm not out of the woods just yet. There's still that doubtful voice in me. There's still that ruminative, doubtful, intrusive voice that still creeps in. And it's about, I really came to just a lot of different philosophy, a lot of forcing, all of these elements, all these things forced me into self-love, which I never had for myself. I never self-loved. When you're highly empathic, or you're just so attuned to everyone else in your environment, you're so out of your own body for so many fucking years, you self-loathe, and it's not an overnight process. And I always am reminding myself that, like, dude, you've been doing that, you've been dizzy since 14. You got to just like relax a little bit. And like, I'm very hard on myself. I'm a very high achiever. There's a lot of things I want to do in life. I'm very career driven. I'm very just like, I want to create, I want to innovate this world. There's a lot of things I want to do. I'm very passionate about anatomy as well, all through this process. So it forced me into having self-love for myself, which I never did. So I'll end it there, and please feel free to reach out to me if you ever want to have any conversation. Like, I'm going to be going more in depth about my case, and I just look forward to hearing from everybody, and just like, I really hope I could be a mouthpiece for just, I don't know, anyone living in the fucking dark about this, because that's where I was. And like I said, it's like I still have a lot of work to do. It's like I've kind of really just begun on this journey, and that's part of the perfectionism. It's like perfectionism will make you feel, once you feel a little better, that it's like, all right, that's it. You don't have to work anymore. Throw it all out. Throw all the tools out. All right, you're better now, right? You're better. You felt a little good. And that's what I was doing for so long, is like I get a little better. I feel a little better. And then I would do more activity, get dizzy, get an episode, and then I'd be like, oh, fuck. Oh, I'm not better. It's like, I'm going to expand on that more. So I'm probably not making sense at this point. So thank you for, if you watched this long. Yeah, that's all I can think of right now. I'm gonna be going more in depth. Okay.